paid some attention to this matter of the discussion of the reform of the Oakland City Charter. And I'll just cut to the chase and say that upon reflection, yet again, after I guess maybe the thousandth time, uh, a lot of people are asking the wrong question. And I think what got me a little triggered was the people who were involved in the discussion are not, to me, they weren't the people that were around when we first started charter reform all the way back in 1993 when Oakland District 4 Councilmember Dick Spees and my mentor Richard Winnie headed, well, they had a debate that was published on the front page of the Tribune that I covered as a new columnist with Montclarian, and wound up affecting my life directly because I was hired to work as an Elihu Harris economic advisor in '95, and Elihu had tried his version of strong mayor, as we called it, um, in that '94, that '96, and it lost, and I went in favor of it, and it cost me my my Clarion column because the now late Warren Chip Brown and T. Gary Rogers, CEO Kaiser, didn't want it, and basically they didn't want, as it was perceived by a number of people, a black mayor having that, quote, that kind of power, unquote. Uh, it was really an unfortunate look, an unfortunate image of the city that a number of us came away from, our city. So along comes Jerry Brown, who basically takes Elihu's idea and tweaks it. Instead of what Elihu had, which is, hey, sitting on the city council, all right, presiding over the city council as president, we would have two at-large members. Jerry took himself out of that. He said he basically made it so that he could hang out in his office and watch the proceedings from television, or as someone said, on high from the portico, and be there to break a tie if he were so inclined. Okay, and that version of Measure X, as it was called, not Measure F. Measure X was a sexy name. Passed, and it passed under a too not at all veiled look at Oakland from a standpoint that was racist. Jerry said that basically uh, he wanted to break up what he perceived as a black power structure. Well, anyone who knows that Oakland does not have a black power structure. We had a lot of our folks who were firsts because we've been discriminated against. You know, I mean, people tend to forget that sort of stuff, or worse. At any rate, but I digress. So we install the council manager form of government, Jerry style. What's the difference between what we have now and what we had then? Well, I said it in part. The mayor hires and fires the chief administrative officer. And that, folks, is not working. That singular thing is the problem. All right? That's it, really. Um, the problem that is not addressed by Stephen Falk, um, and is not the problem as I see it, is, and this is because Stephen, he was fortunate enough to work in Oakland for a few months under Libby, uh, and did a job as a fill-in CAO. Um, the big problem has little to do with management in that style. All right. Uh, the problem is that we are hiring people who don't know Oakland. And because of the fact that the mayor can hire and fire the CAO, the employment horizon of the common city administrator is much shorter. I calculated that we went from an average before 2017 at the time of 2.21 years, excuse me, 2.8 years to 2.1 years. And I had a long conversation with then Oakland District T Council member Lynette Gibson McElhaney, who told me that I was right on. She contacted me about my blog post, which I put on Facebook, and saw it and said, "Yeah, you're absolutely right. We have an instability problem." Okay. Well, folks, we're so far down the pike that the instability problem has caused a lack of institutional memory, and the institutional memory problem has been supplanted by a willingness to hire people from outside at a rate like I've never seen before. We have our current city CAO from Atlanta, no problem with that, but just from Atlanta. The head of DOT from Atlanta, both new, and it's difficult to reach back and find Oaklanders in key areas like economic development that were there for 20 years or 30. And there's no organization, there's no club, there's no alumni association that invites folks like me in to be, constant contributors and remind people of how we used to do things when we did them well in different areas. And on top of that, some of us have died off. And on top of that, all of us are getting older. And on top of that, we did do it better in the past. So changing from what we have to what Stephen and his wife are proposing is not the answer. And it's not going to get us anything better. I do agree that we were better under a council manager form of government. But what I don't like is that Stephen presents it as if he presents his problem as if we didn't have council manager form of government before, as if it's brand new, as if, hey, we thought of this, and by the way, no one ever did it before. But the bigger problem I have is that it doesn't get to the real issue. In complex systems, I learned this when I first took up system dynamics as a practice. Now I'm an expert in system dynamics modeling. In system dynamics modeling and in systems theory, and I learned this from C. West Churchman, is that every system has at its core driver variables, driver independent variables, of which there's a field of dependent variables operative. And in the case of Oakland, the main independent variable that's just fixed there is this tendency that's really here. It's like it's not even a stock in system dynamics part of it. So it's more of a converter. But it's this tendency to push back and establish long time frames for the completion of simple projects so that this habit gets stacked. There's that word again, one after the other, after the other, after the other. And it becomes part of a long to-do list of things that could have been taken care of very quickly. Latest example is the fact that the Oakland Police Department does not have a strategic plan for technology, a police technology strategic plan. This was noted by the Alameda County Grand Jury last fall. Our new CAO wrote back that it was going to take 12 to 18 months to produce one. It does not take 12 to 18 months to produce a one-page or two-page police technology strategic plan. Not only that, we produced one before in 2000, actually in 2000, 2007. I'm thinking, why don't we just go back, dig that up, rework it a little bit, and call it a day? We don't have a sense of urgency built into what we do, and changing government structure is not going to solve that problem. It literally has to be built in as a policy edict, as a law, just like we have for the mayor with respect to economic development. The mayor being the steward of the city's economic development is the law. It's in the charter. So, Stephen, you want to talk about charter reform? You mentioned that. Yeah, I'm right there with you because that's more nuanced in terms of essentially work rules. All right. We don't have them. But instead, we get these folks who want to sit down and Stephen, your group is, you know, I mean, it's great that you did this. Okay, hats off to you. Okay, I'll just say that. But my issue is that the people you're talking with and to are not people who worked in the last form of government we had before Jerry's version. For example, did you talk to Ella? Right? You said you went to the NAACP, but I have to say, I want to make sure I have the black bases covered so I don't have to talk. I will. All right. I object to Spur being involved because I don't use Spur as a friendly organization. The idea that Oakland is really East San Francisco. I'm just being honest. And in my view, underscores the fact that last time we did this, it was truly an Oakland affair. You didn't have somebody from San Francisco, sticking their nose into it. It came from a council member, Spees, and it came from an Oakland resident who was partner in a Oakland law firm, Wendell Rosen, Black and Dean, and that was the late Richard Winnie, who also was my mentor. So, who Libby knew very well. We love Richard. So is Becky Taylor. I don't feel like I don't feel like Oakland is involved in this as much as you're an Oakland resident. All right. You've been out there in Lafayette. I get that. But my point is, in terms of people who lived and worked and breathed and ate, slept, and drank Oakland government like me, I will tell you, and that's why I'm using this. I'm saying to you, look, I think we're past the point of just going back to the council manager form of government. We got to where we are, and we had 2 votes on it because people want a mayor who's in charge. They want to be able to help the mayor accountable. That's why we went from the council manager form of government to strong mayor. Okay? There are people who say that the mayor in this system does not have appropriate voting power or veto power. And I'm not sure I want the mayor to have that. In fact, I don't. The only change I believe should be is that the city administrator should not serve at the pleasure of the mayor to the point of not having any independent ability to move, freedom of movement. Because right now the CAO is a political appointee. That's bad. That needs to be taken away. So we take that away and we add work rules. Like, okay, we add work rules regarding time frame of response to items that need to be taken care of, like for example that are deemed of importance by the city council. So it comes up, before the normal process. The council establishes that vote, and we act accordingly. And there's a time frame. We can't make that time frame whatever we agree upon it should be. Then it goes into a separate way of handling it by a special task force of people, of employees, so that we make sure that it gets done in a timely fashion rather than something taking 12 to 18 months. And we stop hiring nonprofits for every little thing we need done. We did economic development in-house. We wrote our strategic plans in-house. We did all that in-house prior to the wave of nonprofit development and financing that happened through the early aughts, the early part of the 21st century. It has done a bit too much damage. It has done a lot of damage, okay, with respect to economic development. We have people in-house who don't know how to do tax increment financing. I learned how to do it in-house from Ezra Rapport, all right? And then I went to the law library and I read Section 33000 through 33999 of the California Health and Safety Code, that was redevelopment, to where I memorized it chapter and verse. Why do you do that, Stephen Falk? I'll tell you why. Because if you want to develop an accurate computer model of a city's finances and economic impact, you need to understand what the law allows you to do. In that case, redevelopment law, property tax laws with respect to rates, Proposition 13, difference between secured and unsecured property. So you need to understand all that before you build your model, and then build your model and then run and test it. That's what I'm good at. So I learned how to do that. I learned that way of thinking in-house. What does that mean? It means it was part of the culture. It was pre-internet. Now, we have nonprofits who are not good, and we have consulting organizations outside who are for-profit who are also not good at tax increment financing. So they wind up telling us, well, you need to wait until the stream of property tax revenue from an area grows to a certain point over a certain year. Well, you don't. If you know how to calculate and forecast the growth of the stream, and if you follow your rules with respect to the 2-to-1 debt coverage ratio for municipal bond, you can actually forecast the growth of the stream such that you can actually develop a bond issue and get your proceeds as close to upfront as possible. You need to do a pay-go, fine. If there's a stream too small, maybe it's because your area is not properly sized. Maybe it's because you're not designing it properly as opposed to just drawing up an area without thought, which is what a lot of people today do. There's a lot of sloppy thinking out there, folks. A lot. There's a lot of sloppy thinking with respect to tax increment financing in California. This is what I'm talking about. There's a lot of sloppy thinking with respect to economic development in California, and Oakland doesn't do economic development anymore, and we need to turn that around so that businesses get the help they need to. Making businesses pay for being tagged by graffiti doers, when good economic development and the proper use of tax increment financing revenue would allow the government to step in and clean that up for the businesses, okay? Something we should be doing, okay, shows you that we're on the wrong track. Because we are. That's insane. And it's shameful that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, Zach Unger, Jean Annie. Now we've got, hey, Charlene Wang, District 2, my friend, I'm counting on you. Carol Fife. And we have Noel Gaio. And our once great interim mayor, okay, in place of District 6 yet again. And of course, my buddy Ken Houston in District 7. This is all you guys' fault now. You're the city council and Rowena at large. All right? This is all happening under your watch. You have to do better. You have to insist on urgency. Insist on this getting done, because the reason why the A's are gone has nothing to do with John Fisher. It has everything to do with us, Oakland, not developing a tax increment financing plan in a timely fashion by November 2021, when the A's needed it. I wrote on the 25th of November of 2021, the A's should leave for Las Vegas because I was tired of seeing the city screw up, and I went in detail where it made its mistakes, being the person that told Dave Cowell that public funded money could be used when he believed, when we talked on the 4th of April 2017, when he was first hired as president, that public money wasn't available and he needed to use private money for his new ballpark. Then thought of this possibly being at the Coliseum before Howard Terminal became a thing. Okay? I'm the person that got us into this. I'm the person that got Dave Cowell a copy of SB 628 Beal, the father of all enhanced infrastructure financing district legislation. I'm the person